Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome at last to my full review for RWBY Volume 4. Before we begin though, I must start with a big spoiler warning. Please do not watch this review if you haven't seen up to the finale of Volume 4, as not only will I obviously be discussing Volume 4's contents, but I may also mention some past incidents in the show itself, so if you don't want to be spoiled, wait until you've caught up, or watch at your own risk. So once more we're in the hiatus period for RWBY, with another volume all done and dusted. Volume 4 has flown by really, and it's time to look back and share my feelings on the whole thing. Remember, these are just my opinions, not fact. And while I do love the show and Rooster Teeth as a whole, my appreciation won't cloud my overall thoughts. Because I do want the show to succeed, and nothing is free from getting critiqued. If you don't agree with the points I make, that's fine, and you're more than welcome to share your opinions in the comments down below, though please do so respectfully. Without further ado, let's begin. Let's start with the obvious point to make. It was always going to be hard to follow on from Volume 3, a highly emotionally charged volume that finally brought the looming larger narrative into the forefront and sparked a major shift in the show's tone. Even then, from the moment that Volume 3 ended, I knew Volume 4 wasn't going to be as dark as its predecessor. That's not to say I expected a tone similar to the more jovial days of food fights and cross-dressing, but I knew that this was going to be a much slower volume that lets us focus on the new locations and plot points that the characters would explore, and also let us see how they recovered from Beacon's fall, now that the dust has settled. I'm going to go over each key arc now one by one before I give my thoughts on the story as a whole. And I'll start with the two micro arcs, with the Salem's Lot arc and Oscar and Ozpin's arc. I was glad to finally see who are the bigger opposing faces at long last, after Volume 3 made it clear that there was a lot going on in the shadows, even if it was only Salem, Cinder and Tyrion who got any worthwhile focus, with Hazel and Watts clearly safe for Volume 5, being revealed here just to serve as small teasers before their true moments, and Emerald and Mercury basically serving as window dressing, which was a shame after their strong roles last volume. I think we needed a little bit more out of Salem to help sell why we need to fear her, not just as the leader of this whole villainous force, but as her own entity. But she definitely has the air of command that you don't want to cross, and that vibe of a mysterious woman you want to know more of. She just needs to start connecting to the heroes outside of Ozpin, now that he's out of action. And while Tyrion's major impacts were in the Ranger side of things, I'll mention here that I love this character so much. I've said it elsewhere that Tyrion is the right kind of bad guy the show needed after Torchwick's death. While the Scorpio is quite the showman himself, it's less about ego or being a charismatic sort, and more showing off his gleeful yet sadistic mind as he enjoys the hunt. Tyrion being a thing also helps blend in some of Salem's actions affecting the likes of RWBY and co, which, as I said, is going to be key moving forward. And with Tyrion snapping over Salem's comments, he's gone from deadly hunter to vicious animal, which makes any future appearance all the more intense with the mayhem and pain that he could bring when he's unhinged. The brightest thing from the villain focus though, in my opinion, was seeing Cinder in a drastically new situation. Someone who seemed so untouchable in the past, now wounded, humbled, and even shown as being low on the bad guy totem pole when it comes to respect, despite all she accomplished. It was about time we saw Cinder on the ropes, and with new emotions on display, which should make her next encounter with RWBY feel much more impactful, with both sides having a lot to back up their actions and a lot weighing in on their shoulders. This whole chapter from Miss Fall also showing that the villains aren't always going to be perfect, and they may need their own developments just to succeed. A story point I didn't expect to see though was everything going on with Oscar and Ozpin. I speculated that we would hear nothing more on Ozpin for a good while, so couldn't be shocked there when that was being proved wrong, let alone him appearing in the next volume and tied to this brand new face that also came out of the blue. And yet it's formed an intriguing new dilemma and a unique master and pupil dynamic that I'm curious to see unfold as time goes on, even if it is still early days knowing the farm boy as a character. something I feel another episode of Focus could have helped. Not just to see more of what this kid is like, but to also see the kind of life that he's now forced to leave behind, for a destiny that he never expected nor understands right now. And that comment by Ospin about Oscar wanting to be more than just being a farmhand, I feel should have been a case of show don't tell, or at the very least needed to be hinted at beforehand. Like Oscar talking to his aunt about becoming something more, or seeing him ponder over Huntsman advert at home instead of when he's already on his way. That way, I'd feel we get more out of him, making this massive change in his life, knowing all that he stands to lose, and yet what it is that would drive him forward on a brand new and scary journey. Now on to the bigger arcs, and let's start with all things going on in Blake's world. Despite Adam and the White Fang impacting her life and those around her in a very big way, this arc was probably far more subdued for the cat girl than I imagine most expected, focusing more on a very emotionally unstable Blake seeking the comforts of home to clear her mind, instead of any retaliation against the White Fang or Adam. Her struggle with accepting help has always been a big issue for the Huntress, maybe even more so than her often being unwilling to face a struggle. This was an interesting conflict that I welcomed in this volume. Blake's cruel past affecting her far more positive environment and relationships, to the point of the cat girl needing space from everything just to avoid breaking down under this new struggle that she's found herself in. Her head saying to go it alone from now on just to spare anyone else getting hurt, while her heart is saying to keep those bonds close and don't let her quest rob her of a happy life. I quite liked it honestly, as it served to show the social outcast Blake has grown and cares about her newfound friends so much that she'd be willing to cut them off and be alone just to know that they are safe from her tormentors. It's why I'm glad that Sun was added on for this arc, not just to have a proxy for the viewers so we can hear information on Blake's family and on Menagerie, but also acting on behalf of those bonds that Blake made, trying to show the good that can come with confronting such issues with those that are willing to take the strife alongside you out of affection and wanting you to be happy as well. It was a clear tug of war of emotions on display, and yet, mind you, it did bring some bumps in some people's eyes thanks to Blake's attitude, especially towards Sun. And yes, while Blake was sometimes far too aggressive, I see it as clear proof as to why Blake does need her friends and loved ones around to keep her on track emotionally. Sometimes you need an element in a character to hate to see them become a better person when they break free from it. So with that, I think this arc did complete its main task, rebuilding Blake's drive to better the issue with the White Fang, while accepting that she does need others beside her to help balance her emotions so she can act with a calmer head moving forward, and yet still enjoy her life for once, not letting her mission control her life like it almost did back in Volume 2. This arc also benefited from introducing Blake's parents, who were very entertaining and heartwarming with their own soothing of Blake's mental woes, alongside some very colourful interactions with Sun. Not only that, but we finally saw some more defined key faces in the White Fang, beyond Adam. That alone helps the faction come off as a far larger issue to deal with than just one guy, as well as adding more possible dynamics when it comes to the race conflict. While it didn't end with any real climax, it was effective as an emotional hurdle in my opinion, with perhaps my only nitpick being the lack of Adam and little time truly exploring this beautifully designed menagerie. On to the arc with her partner Yang now, and like Blake's arc, it's very subdued in terms of tone, but obviously for good reason. The only conflict being Yang finding her feet again and coping with a life-altering change, which ended up as a really positive piece. We got to see more of Yang at a dialed down level, stuff we've not seen a lot out of the Firecracker in the past, and thanks to some wonderfully charming chemistry with Tai and some great voice work involved, I did feel happy with what we got at the end, with some of that fire back in Yang's soul, just with a stronger air of maturity to her aura. Even then, like with Oscar's arc, it felt a tad rushed because of the limited time given, not letting the pace flow all that natural in the end. Take the recovery arc in Legend of Korra. Both that and Yang's arc took place over 4 episodes, and yes, while Korra's side had longer episodes and it was the biggest arc at the time, the pacing felt more smooth in that side. The ups and downs flowed more naturally as Korra went from broken, to hopeful, to lost, to stronger. With Yang, we had one episode with her getting by but clearly a shell of her former self, not willing to consider getting back into the game, and then the next, while she's still not 100%, she was more akin to her normal attitude, making jokes, conversing with others, and openly discussing what is holding her back. It was still really good stuff, and the advice was spot on, but I just feel we needed one more episode to see more of her struggling with some Adam nightmares and embracing what she's lost, what she can still do, and what's in her way, while also seeing her at a much smoother pace go from the shut-in to the more socially expressive type that is familiar to the Yang we know and love. Next up is Weiss's arc. Ever since Weiss started to turn a corner from being a frosty bitch to someone who has a bit more compassion and understanding to them, seeing how she handled things back home with this new attitude was always going to be a drama-filled clash of heads to look forward to, as well as finally getting to see the negative environment that shaped her into such a sour person in the first place. Overall, I do think what we got was very pleasing, but unlike the previous two arcs where clearly was not building up to a big climax in favour of something more personal, I felt this arc had a dramatic conclusion clearly set up, and yet it didn't deliver, leaving with a bit of a whimper, even with a very positive end for Weiss. Okay, let's be fair, this arc was great, especially at the start. Weiss's dual outbursts were wonderfully presented and performed, and while Jacques may be a tad one-dimensional as the asshole greedy businessman, the Schnee-focused world of Remnant hints to some intriguing behind-the-scenes action that will hopefully get explored down the line, and help flesh the guy out a bit more. Even then, the Schnee figurehead did live up to the imposing aura that would shape him into a new kind of character in the show to detest, someone who's hurting our heroes emotionally, more than physically. Thus making it all the better when Weiss did finally challenge her father's ideals at several points, especially when it came to defending those who in the past she also would have looked down on, and I appreciated Weiss didn't back down in the end, even though her words did fall on deaf ears. Whitley was also a very surprising yet fun new dynamic introduced, and thanks to his warped views teaming up with Jacques' aggressive attitude and the snobbish nature of some high-class Atlesians, it painted a very clear picture of just how trapped Weiss has felt at home, and why she feels the best that she can do for herself is to be away from this place. The Schnee family's true nature is all kinds of ugly, as is Atlas itself, making Weiss's plight to want to recover the sullied name and succeed as her own person finally appear as a tougher task than just not being a dick like Jacques or Whitley. It's clear Weiss has a long way to go before she can have a larger impact on the negatives present at Atlas, let alone within her own home. But Weiss came out of this volume looking the strongest emotionally she's ever been, having taken her first shots back and learning from each of the outcomes as she presses on. But again, I just wish the ending felt stronger. After finally confronting her father and summoning the Knight, which were both grand landmarks for the former heiress, the arc felt like it was set up for a big explosive Knight-involved outburst, or even a tense escape past everything Jacques has set out to keep Weiss in check. But instead, we had a breakout with no real challenge, and thus a lack of true drama or tension. There wasn't even a final clash with Whitley or Jacques, just overhearing a, at least admittedly, interesting and possibly disruptive dynamic coming out of Ironwood. And yet, it just felt like there was little payoff from such a bold move against her father in what was Weiss's most notable challenge to date. The biggest and strongest arc came out of Team Ranger's trek across Anima, home to some of the best tension, action, and emotion, while being the leading arc pushing the biggest story forward. Each of its major players came out of it with something positive, even in small amounts like RWBY, who, even though she once more played a less focused role until near the end, I still welcome seeing RWBY's brave soul and her still growing heart confronting the hardships of the world and coming out on the other side with more reasons to keep fighting. Jean though was especially wonderful, seeing him coping with the loss of Pyrrha in a very painful and yet inspiring way. His steady rise into a tougher person physically and mentally continues to be a worthwhile and entertaining story with each rise and fall. The goofball that could barely handle a conversation with a girl let alone fighting a Grimm is long gone. though thankfully, he's not lost his sillier sides completely, still able to crack a joke or at least be the punching bag. But we've seen Jean truly being shaped by his experiences in various ways, the lad's natural sharpness in combat and his sincere heart being put to the test, while using the very pain that wounds him still to this day as his reasoning to keep fighting. He's still got some kinks to work out, and it's clear that it will be tough on him to accept what did lead to Pyrrha's death, but we're beginning to see the man that Pyrrha believes Jean could be, and I can't call that a bad thing at all. We even had the extra treat of some very cool new dynamics and struggles involving Crow, who was not only badass as ever and shown to be a capable, if not inexperienced, mentor figure, but he was also shown weak for the first time, which helps him feel a bit more human and less invincible, with some of his character traits also being brought out to focus, thanks to the weight now on his shoulders as Osmond's temporary replacement, and his bad luck semblance clearly shown as defining a lot of his current attitude and actions. His discussion with Raven was also a very strong highlight that let us explore the guy's hardened nature, and proved to be one of the best scenes of the entire show, doing the double as well with letting Raven flesh out at long last, serving as another prime connection as well of Salem's actions to the countermeasures formed by their opposing forces. Though without a doubt, one of the volume's biggest strongest points was the spotlight on Ren and Nora. It was a long time in the making, but the pair feel like they finally got some deserved focus that helped boost their character with some rare emotional struggles that gave us new reasons to care about them, beyond being some of the show's most colourful characters, after knowing what they've gone through and how they cope with some major turmoil. After so long of seeing these two act close, we now know why they are so close. All the more reason to want to see them push on and stay alive, and be happy. Their arc being some of the most emotionally charged moments in the show period. Ren and Nora truly feel like worthwhile characters now, after so long being supporting at best, which will go a long way in helping this new team dynamic feel united before its next gigantic challenge. While a lot of this new group's shared charm does come from having 3 volumes together already, we've now seen this group put to the grindstone and come out of it looking like a well-oiled machine that's been together far longer than a few months, each with their own role as a fighter, aiding in each other's weaknesses, and also fulfilling defined roles outside of battle, like Ren being the experienced guide of Anima, and Jean often being the shot caller on decisions. This whole volume was clearly set at a low and patient pace, with the key theme being recovery, and moving several characters' current collective emotions from despair to hope. Hope that they can do better next time. Hope that their lives doesn't have to end here and end in abrupt, sad ways. And hope that there is still light after all the darkness. What was also a big focal point was seeing the characters that we've grown to love over the last 3 volumes trying to overcome their emotional struggles while doing so in very unfamiliar or sometimes hostile locations, and I loved it. But as I said before, some arcs suffered because of a jam-packed volume not granting enough space for events to flow naturally, on top of providing a satisfying chain of events for each plotline. The trio of Blake's, Yang's and Weiss's arcs took the worst of the volume being crowded, but I still wouldn't say it was a failure all the same. I did come out of this volume feeling like both sides of the growing battle got stronger, seeds for future growth and conflict were planted along the way, and the volume as a whole granted me far more insight into who these people are and what this world can be like. And while some singular arcs definitely needed a stronger conclusion, I did overall feel far more content come the volume's end than I did for volume 2's ending, as this one at least rewarded me with characters that have clearly grown from their struggles. While I think the time skip might have done more harm than good from a writing standpoint, forming so many arcs to focus on, I feel the writing team can take some positives in the end, making things stronger next time out. Of course, this wasn't just a new experience for the story and characters, but we also had a completely brand new animation program being used, with the switch from Poser to Maya. Now, I personally felt Volume 3 was the best that we've seen out of the Poser animation side, at least at that time, so when I heard that Volume 4 was going to change up things, I admit I was kind of cautious about it. Maya had to be something pretty good if it's being used by all kinds of films, TVs, games and more, but again, After hitting some top quality work last time out, I was fearful that things may decline or the show's trademark look may suffer with the change. That being said, I think the animation team have done wonders this volume. There was a natural wiggle period that comes with changing an established element, but what we got out of it was definitely worth it. The level of detail has grown immensely, with far better material visuals like on RWBY's emblem, a slew of amazing background designs helping this world look even more fantastic, and some nice touches to the grim with eye trails and the black smoke aura that, honest to God, finally makes these guys look threatening. Like beasts that are unnatural to this world, and looking as menacing as creatures of their kind should be. We've been told that these things are something to fear, and they finally look the part, including some awesome new designs that broke the norm of being mostly animal-inspired monsters, with the Knuckle of V getting very high praise for its creepy mannerisms, its role in Ren and Nora's past, and the outstanding build-up to its full reveal that truly embodied the fear factor that should be present with these terrors. While some of the fight animations did feel a little too weightless at points, and the odd animation and detail could have used some tuning up, combat still looked fluid and powerful, flowing nicely into the next move. And notably, casual animations were some of the best in the show, looking far more natural and less stiff than in the past. My personal favourite benefit though from the switch to Maya is without a doubt the improvements made to emotive and facial animations. Lip movements synced up far better with the voice work here, and extra detail was given to the face as a whole for some better expressions. Can't forget the stuff by the way the animation team did with Blake's ears in this volume, which was fantastic. The cat girl looking far better than ever when it comes to physically expressing herself, thanks to her faunus ears acting more lifelike, and I hope that's a trend that will continue for all faunus. The new outfits fitted right as new evolutions of the characters themselves, most of the backgrounds are beautifully stunning, we got better visual effects and stronger quality background character models, and overall, I feel my initial concern with the switch, while fair, was hardly necessary come the end. For the first dive into Maya for the show, it's a grand introduction, and I hope the team can continue to improve with more and more experience. And finally, the audio portion. It might seem cliche at this point, but the OST for this volume is fantastic. Not just in the vocal tracks by the way, but the main score as well. Several times I found myself being hooked onto the background pieces that definitely matched the air of mystery, fear, and danger that was present across the volume as a whole, and having enough variety in how a lot of the darker pieces sounded from another, while putting in the same quality effort on the rarer, more positive pieces found. There was also a wide array of standout pieces that used notable motifs from past songs that I just flat out found perfect. There was the chilling tune during the initial Salem's Lot scene echoing bits of Divide, and the heartbreaking piece during Jean's remembrance of Pyrrha echoing the emotional Volume 3 chat. Mirror Mirror, a song tied to Weiss's struggles being used during one of her greatest accomplishments, was a masterstroke in my opinion, with the two pieces using Boob for notable Ren and Nora moments, adding just that right amount of added warmness for some truly emotional moments. And yes, the vocal tracks were a phenomenal positive, leaving me once more itching to get this soundtrack and the full versions of songs like This Life Is Mine, Bad Luck, Charm and Home. Notable pieces I absolutely adored, not just in terms of Casey and Jeff's vocals, but the music itself just ticking all the right boxes for me. Same praise goes for the voice acting. Many of the performers old and new brought out some of their best work yet in such a giant rollercoaster volume that gave them new themes to work with very high praise fairly given to the likes of Neef, Miles, Barbara and Bernie, just to name a few. Even with the high amount of talent who were brought in that are far more notable in their voice work, the in-house performers didn't rest on the outside talent providing the quality, and for that, they all deserve praise, alongside the brilliant big names who were golden in this volume, like Josh, Jason, Aaron and Tara. Overall, it's clear this volume has its hiccups, and areas that do need to be improved on in the future. The time skip brought in newer locations sooner rather than later, and helped speed up the process of some of the characters' recovery so things actually happened, on top of some maturing of some of the characters' looks to match their inner growth, but on the other hand, I do feel it handicapped the RWBY in terms of the focus and pacing, as well as the potential of some set pieces being thinned out within such a congested time limit. Even then, above all else, this volume had one major task that it had to accomplish: serve as a purposeful and entertaining bridge connecting one arc of the main narrative to the next, while providing a thoroughly entertaining section in its own right. And even with the nicks and bumps it picked up along the way, I do feel Volume 4 succeeded. Many of the faces on both sides got much needed time of focus or new conflicts to overcome. The world feels larger than ever, with plenty within to make it feel like a living, breathing world and not just a stage for the story. The presentation continues to grow alongside the characters, and at its conclusion, it left me with enough to look back on fondly, while also making the way for Volume 5 feel like a marathon. If I had to rank the whole thing against its predecessors, I think I would be fair in feeling that it is below Volume 3, but a positive solid contender for second place against Volume 2 perhaps. Like the heroes themselves, I am hopeful that even with some rough spots gained, the show and the RWBY itself will continue to improve, and make each new venture feel worth it. It's going to be a long wait for whatever comes next, and I cannot wait. And that's it. The last review of Volume 4, all wrapped up and yours to observe. Obviously my opinions will differ from yours, and I'd really love to see how you may differ or even agree with some of my points. So please share them in the comments down below if you feel like it, and also if you want to, like and fave the video. As I've said before, I won't be stopping making content now that the show's on a break, so be sure to click the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they come out, and definitely follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan, where I post anything to do with RWBY, but I will also update on future videos and anything else on my mind. For now though, thank you again for all of you who have watched my content this volume. It's been a great ride, and I cannot wait to bring even more videos for you to hopefully enjoy. Cheers for the support, but until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.